There's another science popularizer out there who also has a number of fans and also seems to be getting himself into hot water. Someone that we've interviewed before, Michio Kaku, who was interviewed on
Dylan Radigan
show, yeah,
on MSNBC.
Yeah, Evan, you saw this.
I did see it. Indeed, I did.
Want to tell us about
it? The discussion was about UFOs. Dylan Radigan asked the question of Michio Kaku about UFOs and which objects are identified, which ones remain unidentified. And Michio went on to say that for UFOs, there are roughly about 95% of them can be explained through what we already know. But he said there are that remaining 5% that remain, in his words, in Michio Kaku's words, spooky, in which he says that all of our tools and all of our physics cannot account for them, that they cannot explain. Also, Dr. Kaku says that how could so many scientists, pilots, people from the military, government leaders who have seen some of these things that can't be explained, how can they all be wrong or delusional or be suffering the same sort of blind spot, as it were? How can these credible witnesses all together be seeing something that we cannot explain?
That was the part where you probably heard me scream. Yeah. You may, if you were wondering what that noise was, all you listeners out there in podcast land, that was me going, "What?"
Well, I hate to break this to you guys, but this is not new. Michio Kaku has talked about UFOs quite a bit in the past, and including a very long article he wrote, too long for what it is about, in The Telegraph, called Michio Kaku on the Science Behind UFOs and Time Travel. And in it he talks about the unexplained cases in France and, I don't know, just all sorts of things that he finds credible. There was something about the French government releasing a report that included 1,600 UFO sightings over 50 years. And he talks about how only 9% could be fully explained, 33% had likely explanations, but the rest the government was unable to follow up on, and it's very credulous. And this was written back in March of 2008. So he's actually been at this quite a while, unfortunately.
And it's hard to know which logical fallacy to start with here.
Right.
He's confusing unexplained with unexplainable. Argument from authority.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I'd like to take all these people who have seen these UFOs that can't be explained, put them in a room, say there's 1,000 of them or whatever, and then ask them, does the Earth go around the sun? Is evolution real? Is Obama a Muslim? All these questions that we've been hearing in the news lately, and see if these guys really rate any differently than the public at large. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the one case I like to talk about was about a year ago when there was a New Jersey pilot who was on the news there because he had seen a UFO and talked about how it turned at a right angle and went off at a high rate of speed. And it was confirmed absolutely that this UFO was one of those bag lanterns, a bag with a candle under it that was floating around that they release at weddings. And so even pilots, they're not trained rigorously to understand everything they see. They're trained to understand what they see when they're flying. So even if they're in a plane and they see something they can't explain, it just means they can't explain it. So, his arguments here are, they don't hold water with me. And you're even, I can never remember, is it begging the question? When basically you're just making this assumption that these 5% aren't explained. When in fact, we don't know. I don't know. I haven't studied these cases. I don't know what's going on. So it seems like there's a series of logical fallacies that are tripping him up here.
Typically, that 5% residue is basically events that there's not enough information to definitively say, oh, it was Venus, oh, it was swamp gas, as Kaku said, or anything like that. That's typical with this 3 to 5%. And for me, my takeaway from his talk was that basically, Michio is a good scientist, but he's not a skeptic. I mean, clearly he's not familiar with some key things that skeptics need to know, such as mechanisms of self-deception, which is key, which is just so important. And he just seems to be just not plugged into that at all.
How could someone like him, make these types of logical mistakes? It blows my mind. I was thinking about it all day today. what's going on in his head? I mean, doesn't he have the critical thinking skill set? He has to have it.
Well, no, I mean, Jay, we see this over and over and over again. You know, smart people get fooled all the time because we're human and we have this ability to, we have a really powerful tool of skepticism, and we have this ability to segment our brains and apply that tool to some parts of our lives, and the other parts we don't touch it. And, you know, you see it again and again, and scientists are some of the easiest people to fool. Talk to Randy about that. Randy's spent his life trying to teach scientists to not get fooled. It's a different way of, you know, we talk about how skepticism is really applying science to other aspects of life, but the day-to-day work of a scientist really isn't about skepticism. It's not about protecting yourself against fraud or con artists or just, you know, people who have fooled themselves. So, yeah, I mean, this happens all the time. Sadly.
I'm really disappointed, though.
Not too long ago, David Attenborough, right, who we know is a respected voice of natural history programs for such a long time, was on a show, I think it was last year, and I was watching this interview with him, and he was talking about the possibility that Bigfoot or a Sasquatch-like creature could exist, and he felt it was plausible. He felt, yeah, why not? You know, there's been so many sightings, own field. And so, absolutely, he says, how could all these people who have seen something be totally fooled or totally wrong about what they're seeing? We're seeing this is the exact same. I think this is a good comparison to what we're witnessing with Dr. Kaku. So it does happen.
It's the reliable witness fallacy. It's a complete fallacy, the notion that someone could be such a reliable witness that they're not susceptible to optical illusions and false memory and all the other things that every human being on the planet is susceptible to.